oral radiology. So this is a cumulative session. So basically the first question here that we have is identify the supernumerary teeth that is given in the image. So basically they are asking what type of supernumerary teeth is present in this particular image that is given. So it is a paramolar, distomolar, mesiodense and mulberry molar. So basically all the other options are related to the molar. Here you can see this is something which is present between two central incisors. So it is mesiodense. Okay, so mesiodense is located in the near line or the midline of the incisor region of the maxilla between the central incisors. So straight away you can give this answer to be the mesiodense. Moving to the next one. Guys, if you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself in between and can answer. Can ask me. Otherwise, you can directly put your doubt in the chats. Then also I will answer you. The next question here is a radiograph that exhibits areas of black and white is termed as high contrast and is said to have a short contrast scale. Now, a radiograph that exhibits many shades of gray is termed as low contrast and is said to have a long contrast scale. Now, let us see what does this statement means. So, high contrast is something which means a pronounced change in the light and dark areas that we see on the film. So, there are fewer shades of the gray and the high contrast has a short scale contrast. Okay, so theoretically, high contrast is best for caries detection, the radiolucent carious lesions showing up distinctly. When coming to the low contrast, these low contrast have many shades of gray seen on the film with less pronounced changes. So they have a long scale contrast. So low contrast is best mostly for the periodontal evaluation. So this is what is about high contrast and the low contrast. Now, moving to the next one, to limit image magnification, the longest target film distance and shortest object film distance are used. So basically to limit the magnification, we increase the source object distance and we decrease the object film distance, as you can see here. So what he is asking here is the first statement is true or the second statement is false. The first statement is false or the second statement is true. Both the statements are true or both the statements are false. So what is the answer according to you? So what is the answer according to you? Guys, everyone is here. Guys, everyone is here. Yes, both are true. So basically, both the statements are true. Here, um, someone, please unmute mute yourself because there is echoing heard here. Okay, yeah. Sorry if I muted. If I muted from my side because there would be disturbance even for the other students. Okay, so the answer would be C. Moving to the next one. During patient exposure, which type of beam attenuation occurs most frequently? So most frequently, which type of beam attenuation is seen? So is it coherent scattering, Compton scattering, photoelectric absorption, or the Bremsstrahlung radiation? So basically coherent scattering is something which is found to be least frequent. And whenever the patient is exposed, the most frequently occurring photon interaction would be the Compton scattering, not even the photoelectric. So the option would be option B, Compton scattering, which is a type of beam attenuation that occurs most frequently. Which is an accurate description of a film exposed to 60 kVp compared to a film exposed to 100 kVp, with all the other factors being constant. So basically they are only talking in the terms of KBP, and they're telling that the remaining other factors are generally constant. So now let us see how this KVP affects the contrast. So basically, whenever you have a higher KVP settings, the X-rays can easily pass through the objects in their path. So when they can easily pass through their path, the shades that you can see are of the low contrast. That is, whenever you have a higher KVP, you have a lower contrast. When coming to the other side, that is at a lower KVP settings, it is harder for the X-rays to pass through the objects. So that would cause a high contrast. So at lower KVP settings, you have a high contrast. So it is opposite. Now let us see here. He is giving options in the terms of density, scale, contrast. So it is basically affecting the contrast. So here he's telling from 60 to 100, that is low to high. Then it should be the opposite, that is high contrast to low contrast. So it is option C, from high contrast to low contrast. Moving to the next one, which is the primary reason for the reduction in the MA for exposure of a child's dentition? So basically, we all know why do we reduce the MA settings. So that is for the reduction of the radiation dose. But not only for the reduction of the radiation dose, it is also adjusted or reduced in the case of child's dentition to provide a diagnostic image density. So when they have mentioned it to be a primary reason for the reduction, though it is for the reducing the radiation dose, the main purpose of reducing MA would be to provide a diagnostic image density. So because they are asking us the primary reason, the option would be option C. Moving to the next one, which radiographic principle applies to the edentulous patient? So it's telling the patient is edentulous, and which radiographic principle can be applied to this? Increase KVP settings, decrease exposure time, expose only extraoral imaging, have patient maintain dentures in place. So basically, the edentulous patients, because he's mentioning that is he doesn't have any tooth. So obviously there would be decreased number of dense anatomic structures for the X-rays to pass. So what it would be, the radiographic principle, it would be decreasing the exposure time. So that would be sufficient, because in order to compensate the decreased number of dense anatomic structures, that is, you do not have the number of teeth that normally in normal people as they are present. So in edentulous patient, there would be decrease in the exposure time. Moving to the next one, which of the following represents a radio opaque lining of empty socket shown in the radiograph? So we all know the radio opaque lining of an empty socket. That is immediately after the tooth is removed. If you see the radiograph of that particular area, you can see still a radio opaque lining present. That is nothing but the lamina dura. So this lamina dura is the radio opaque lining of the empty socket that you come across a radiograph immediately after the tooth has been extracted. So it is option B. Which of the following allows the most radiation to penetrate? Amalgam, maxillary spine, sinus space, dentin, or bone? So basically, we know that if the material is dense, that such as something like amalgam, dentin, a bone, or enamel, you have this basically radio opaque structure in the appearance of a radiographic image. But if the radiation just passes through where the absorbing is very little, then that is more radiation can penetrate through the structures, that is through the air spaces, etc. They appear to be the radiolucent. Now he is asking which of the following allows the most radiation. Obviously it would be the maxillary sinus space, which allows the most radiation to penetrate and reach the film, and they appear to be radiolucents as these are less dense materials. So it is option B. Moving to the next one, which statement does not explain, so does not explain the continuous spectrum of the X-ray photons? So accelerated electrons from characteristic radiation. So all electrons are accelerated from the tungsten filament through the tungsten target. So next thing is deflected electrons giving up varying amounts of energy. So basically, during the continuous spectrum of the X-ray production, the deflected electrons give up varying amounts of energy. So this deflected electrons giving up varying amounts of energy is something which is true, and that you can come across the continuous spectrum. And electrons striking the target have varying levels of kinetic energy. Yes, in a continuous spectrum, you see that the electrons, when they strike the target, they do have varying levels of kinetic energy. And in a particular continuous spectrum, you see that the electrons participate in many Bremsstrahlung interactions before losing all their kinetic energy. So the one statement which do not explain the continuous spectrum is the accelerated electrons from characteristic radiation, because both Bremsstrahlung and characteristic radiation are produced during the continuous spectrum. So it is option A, which does not explain the continuous spectrum of the X-ray photons, whereas the remaining sentences explain the continuous spectrum of X-ray photons. Moving to the next one. On an image, the presence of double lamina dura indicates. So when do you see a double lamina dura in a radiographic image? In cases of occlusal trauma, periodontal diseases, inaccurate horizontal angulation, or if the photons are directed at a right angle to the tooth surface. So basically, you can see this type of image, that is double lamina dura, whenever the photons are projected at a right angle to the tooth surface, and this is also known as the peripheral eggshell effect. Okay, so it is option D. It is not in all these occlusal trauma, periodontal disease, or inaccurate horizontal angulation. In all these conditions, we do not see such an appearance. It is only when the photons are directed at a right angle to the tooth surface, you see this double lamina dura, which is known as the peripheral eggshell effect. The nasal cavity, or the floor of the nasal cavity,